I'm Katie Sewell, and this is A Bittersweet Moment with Tiffany Parks.
Hello and welcome to The Bittersweet Life. I'm Tiffany Parks, and this is your midweek Bittersweet Moment. So as I'm sure everyone listening to this is aware, we have a new Pope, Habemus Papam. A few weeks ago, Pope Leo XIV, the first American Pope in history, was elected. And I talked a little bit about witnessing Pope Francis's election and not only being in the square when the white smoke came out of the Sistine Chapel chimney, but also seeing him come out, hearing, of course, the famous words, Habemus Papam, and then seeing his first appearance. If you missed that, you can go back a couple of weeks and find it on the episode called 12 Years a Pope. This time, I was not quite as lucky. I had really hoped to be in St. Peter's Square again when he was elected, but sadly, that was not to be. If you listen to this show regularly, you know that I suffered from a terrible bout of bronchitis and pneumonia this winter, and it came back, although luckily not quite as terribly, in May. You would think it was late April, early May, after traveling. And I had bronchitis again. Did not become pneumonia, thank God. But that I happened to be sort of in the second half of the illness during the conclave. It was very bad timing. I was feeling well enough to make my way into the city, even though my doctor said complete rest and don't go outside if possible. Very Italian doctor. But I said, you know what? I cannot miss at least trying. And so I calculated when he would have the best chance of being elected. And if you go by the last two papal elections, the last papal election, it was the afternoon of the second day or the afternoon vote of the first full day. Since the first day, they only do one voting in the late afternoon. And I want to say Benedict XVI was the same, or he might have been the morning of the third day or the second full day. That's been a long time. I can't quite remember. But I had a feeling the election was going to be fast. Papal elections have been very fast for several decades. I think it's been over 100 years since it took more than 3 days, and about 80 years since it took more than 2 days. And I also know that the Catholic Church likes to, they like to show that there is not a lot of division in the church by having a quick election. You know, I should have known that he would be elected in the afternoon of the second day or the afternoon of the first full day, just like Francis was. But Aurelio had karate that afternoon, and I had a bunch of other things that I had to do in the afternoon. So I thought, I'll go in the morning. He'll be at school, it'll be warmer, and there'll be a good chance. Not a great chance, but a good chance on that first morning. And I went down there, and let me tell you, I was not prepared for the crowds. If you listen back to that episode I did about Pope Francis, during the election, like while the election was happening and we were all sort of waiting for the smoke to come out, there were very few people in the piazza. Like, I'm not going to say there was no one. There was probably more people than usual, but it was not packed, not by any stretch of the imagination. And also, you could just walk in, from anywhere, from any side of the piazza, the front, the right side, the left side. You just stroll right in. Back in those days, by the way, you did not have to go through the metal detectors to get into the piazza. You only had to go through the metal detectors if you wanted to get into the actual basilica itself. So that is one change that possibly made the wait time longer. But I had breakfast with a friend who lives in the area, and I just thought I'm going to stroll down there at around 11 o'clock. And the results won't be ready until quite a bit of time after that. In fact, I brought a book, I brought a journal, even a pencil sharpener, because I'm always prepared. And I thought, I'll be waiting there for a while. I told my friend, come down, because she had to do a work call. I said, come down, when you can, but, maybe 11:45 we can meet. So I headed down there about 11, and I'm walking towards St. Peter's Square from Piazza Risorgimento, if you know the area. And there's this huge mass of people lined up halfway down the street before you even get to the basilica. And I thought, oh my gosh, like these people must be going into the basilica. They can't possibly be waiting just to get into the piazza. So I found some guards, and sure enough, that line was to get into St. Peter's Basilica or the square, either one. You had to wait in that line either to go into the church or into the square. It wasn't just a long line. It was like a mass of bodies, like 10 people wide, probably. People just packed in. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go around to the front of the piazza. I could probably just walk right in. So I start to go around towards the front of the piazza, but I can't get through, even like skirting the outside of the colonnade. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to go down one block, down Via della Conciliazione. I'm going to walk one block. I'm going to cut across, and I'm going to go to the opposite side of the piazza. Because on the opposite side of St. Peter's, there's way fewer tourists coming in, because that's not the side of the museum that has a metro stop, and that's not the side of the piazza that has a metro stop, and it's not the side of the piazza where the entrance to the museums is. So it's much less busy with tourists. So I walk down one block, and there's some more guards there. And I'm like, can I get through? And they're like, no, you have to keep walking down the street. Meanwhile, I'm sick, right? I'm not supposed to be exerting myself, and I've already walked quite a bit that morning. So I'm kind of worried about myself, quite frankly. And I'm like, okay, let me walk down another block. So I walked down another block, closed as well. And I said to the guard, I said, like, when is it going to open up? Like, when can I pass? Because it's a very long street if you have to go to the very bottom of the street. And he said, you can go through the next open street. I'm like, yeah, but which one is that? Like, is that the next one? Is that the one after? He's like, the next one that's open. I'm like, okay, clearly he did not want to understand me. So I walked down one more block, and thankfully that street was open. I crossed to the opposite side of the street, and I walked back up towards the piazza. And luckily, I was able to get into the colonnade, and I was able to go through the metal detectors on the left-hand side. And there was pretty much no line, maybe 10 people in front of me in line. So I got in. I don't know what time it was. I think it was probably 11:30 or later by this time. I sat down on the steps thinking, okay, I'm going to be here a while. There was almost nowhere to sit. There's about 4 or 5 steps all the way around the piazza, all the way along the colonnade. And there was almost not a single spot left to sit on. So I kind of like squished between a couple of people, and I found a place to sit, and I started reading and texting my friend. And there was the smoke, black smoke, unfortunately. Like I said, I didn't get lucky enough to see the white smoke this year. Black smoke, but it happened so fast. Everybody was shocked because the night before it had taken so long. I think they actually had technical problems with the fireplace, or the stove, I should say. It came out black, and I was not really that surprised. A little disappointed, but not that surprised. If I hadn't been sick, I would probably have said to my mother-in-law, listen, my father-in-law, go pick up Aurelio from school, feed him lunch. I have to say I'm very privileged to have them living so close. And I would have maybe taken him to karate on a different day. Looking back, I kind of wish I had done that, but I didn't. And I was at the pizza place where Aurelio and I go for takeout pizza every Thursday night after he does karate. And I said, oh, let me just check and see. And I pulled up the chimney cam on my phone, and sure enough, I saw the white smoke. It was happening at the moment that I happened to open up my phone, which was kind of, at least that was exciting. I knew right away. And as soon as we got home, we turned on YouTube onto a live feed because we don't have a TV, and we saw, what everyone else saw on their TV. We didn't have a chance of being there. But I got to say, like afterwards, looking at people's Instagram reels that were taken on that day of people running through the city, which Claudio witnessed. Claudio experienced that in 2013, running from Trastevere to the Vatican when Francis was elected. I didn't see that because I was actually already there, but I had such a major case of FOMO. Like I so wanted to be there. And in fact, after we picked up the pizza, I said to Aurelio, could we make it? Could we make it into the city? We live about 15 minutes from the Vatican driving with no traffic. There's always traffic, unless it's the middle of summer or maybe a Sunday. But I knew that the traffic was going to be so bad that it was going to be impossible to get down there and impossible to find a place to park. because I remembered 2013. So I was like, no, don't even go there. And then for a moment I thought, what if I were to take the metro? But even then, I'm just like, the logistics of it, like I got to get myself to the metro, and do I find a place to park there, or do I ask for a ride? And then, I'm thinking, calculating the time, am I even going to make it? The end, I decided not to let that really delicious pizza go to waste. And we skipped it and we watched it on TV, and it was fine. But like I said, I'm a person who suffers from FOMO. I kind of always have been. And so it's normal that I felt like I had missed out. But that's okay. It was still fun to watch on screen, and it was fun to have Aurelio watch it there with me. And as we watched, I was listening really carefully to try to hear his name, because when I heard Pope Francis be announced, I missed his name. Like, I didn't catch it because it's in Latin. When they reveal the name of the new pope, the birth name of the new pope, it's in Latin. And I missed it. And I even missed the name that he had been chosen. When you're there live, you don't have the benefit of someone on the news, translating it for you. So it was nice to hear immediately the name of the Pope. And I was sort of listening. I was trying to hear it. I heard Robertum Franciscum, something like that. And I thought, who in the world? And then the journalists announced that it was an American Pope. And man, I was not expecting that. That was such a shock to me that it was an American Pope. And then, of course, we heard his name, which I also missed again. I was like, what? 14 what? And the journalist announced it, luckily for me. But it was very fun. It was very fun to watch that with Aurelio. This is the first papal election that Aurelio has lived through. This is only the second pope who has been ruling during his lifetime. And I do have to say that the first thing that came to my mind when I heard the name Leo was Pope Leo XIV. Now, a lot of people talk about Pope Leo XIII, rightly so, because generally a pope will choose, if he's going to name himself after a previous pope, it's generally the most recent pope of that name, generally speaking. And Pope Leo XIII is apparently who Leo XIV has chosen to be his namesake because there's lots of reasons. You can look that up. But it has to do with the Industrial Revolution. And I think it's a great reason, and I really appreciate it. But my mind went, first of all, Leo I, also known as Leo the Great, one of the great popes of the early church. He was ruling during not only a time of great turmoil in the city of Rome, because it was a time in which the city was being sacked nonstop by barbarians, including the Huns. This is the middle of the 5th century AD. It was also a time in which the Roman Empire had moved to Constantinople. And so there was this big divide in the city, and Rome was just crumbling. And so he was known as being an important peace negotiator, and also being critical in the formation of the modern papacy, which is probably why he's been given that epithet, Leo the Great. But my mind actually first went to Leo IV. Now, Leo IV was ruling in the mid-9th century. He's been called the Byzantine Pope. And he also was ruling Rome in a time of great turmoil. But in this case, it was during a papal schism. What I remember most about Leo IV is from a book that I read called Pope Joan. If you've ever heard of Pope Joan, this is a possibly historic or possibly fictional character. The church says fictional, obviously. Female pope who disguised herself as a man, became a priest, and was eventually elected pope. Whether or not you believe the story, which is hard to believe, there's a great work of historical fiction written about it, simply called Pope Joan. So I definitely recommend you to check that out. It's a great book. I actually read it twice. And Pope Leo IV is a character in that book, and he is pope during that time. And according to this book, he was a very, very positive pope. He was not caught up in the terrible corruption of the church at that time, and he was kind of a pure soul. And one of the things that he was most well known for were the walls of the Vatican that he had built. Now, these are not the walls that you will see if you go and visit the Vatican today. Those were built many centuries later. But he built the very first walls of the Vatican. And this is a little bit of trivia for you. If you've ever heard of the Passetto, which is the famous papal escape route that leads, it's like a raised tunnel, raised above ground on the top of a wall that leads from the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo, which several popes have used during history. The Passetto was actually built I can't remember exactly when it was built. I think it was built in the 13 or 1400s, possibly earlier. I didn't look it up before I started taping. But it was built, interestingly, on top of what are called the Leonine walls, the walls of Leo. And in fact, the area that those walls enclosed was called La Città Leonina, or the Leonine city. Very little of those walls remain, really just the tract of wall that is now the Passetto. But there's a little piazza right to the opposite side of St. Peter's. If you're looking at the Passetto and St. Peter's is on one side, then the piazza is on the opposite side. And that piazza is called Piazza di Città Leonina, the Leonine City Piazza. So that's just a little bit of trivia about a Pope Leo, who is the first one who popped to my mind when I heard our new Pope's name. But anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this mini episode and that you had fun watching, or not, the papal announcement as well. And I have a feeling this Pope is going to be Pope for a long time. He's very athletic. There's a gym in the Borgo, which is a neighborhood right outside St. Peter's, where he apparently used to work out quite regularly. And I don't know if Claudio talked to the owner of the gym, or Claudio, my husband, or if he knows someone who knows him. But he said, I had no idea he was a priest. I had no idea this guy was a priest. He used to just come to my gym. So I think he's in pretty good health, and I think he might pull a John Paul II and be Pope for 25 years. We shall see. Thanks so much for listening. Join us again. Bye.
Katie here. Picture yourself in the heart of Rome, not just seeing the iconic landmarks, but experiencing the hidden corners of this ancient city, away from the typical tourist crowds. It's true, with everything happening in the world right now, you might be wondering if it's worth the risk or the crowds, especially with the Jubilee bringing more people to Rome in 2025. But here's the secret. If you come on the Bittersweet Life Roman Adventure this October, you won't find yourself on a tour of the overcrowded spots. This is an exclusive, personalized journey through Rome's most secret corners, places where few have ever ventured. Now we know there are concerns. With the Jubilee bringing more travelers to the city, hotel prices in Rome have skyrocketed this year, and they'll probably just keep going up. But here is the good news. We're taking care of that for you. We are absorbing the rising costs so that you don't have to. You'll stay in a carefully selected, luxurious hotel right in the heart of Rome without having to pay the premium that most others will. And each morning, Tiffany and I will lead you through the city to see the real Rome, places even most locals don't know about. Imagine strolling through ancient streets, standing in awe of secret churches, hidden piazzas, breathtaking views, all while avoiding the busy crowds. And when the afternoon rolls around, the city is yours. Every afternoon is completely free for you to explore on your own. But don't worry, we've got your back. You'll receive a special booklet packed with insider tips to guide you. It's your personal roadmap to the best overlooked museums, the most incredible food, and self-guided walking tours that will let you dive deeper into the soul of Rome. This is your chance to explore Rome at your own pace, without the stress of planning or missing out on the real treasures of the city. The world may be in a bit of chaos right now, but Rome is waiting for you, with open arms and a quiet, timeless beauty that's just waiting for you to discover it. We're going to Rome October 5th through the 11th, 2025. You can find details at our website, thebittersweetlife.net, or just send us an email, bittersweetlifepodcast bittersweet@gmail.com. This year, we are only offering 8 rooms. It will be a small, intimate trip where you'll get to know Tiffany and I on a more personal level, and you'll get to see the most wondrous things. I hope you decide to come.